All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ocean Outlast Expert. I hope everyone is doing great today. I know that I am. We are jumping right back on into things today. First, I do want to mention we did stream this mod pack last Friday. So there's some stuff that did happen. I'll run through it here shortly that we did over on the stream. But if you are curious and getting a full recap of what we did over on our stream, highly recommend checking out my Twitch in the description down below. You can go over there and check out all of the recent videos and get yourself up to date. And you can even follow over on there so you can keep updated with when we do go live, so you can catch the streams live and you can come and hang out with me and all the other people in the community as well. So definitely recommend doing that. So let's catch up on what we did do in the last stream. So as you can see here in my hand, we have the upgraded storage remote now. Now, this is from Simple Storage. We've gone down this path before. We've had different issues that have come up along the way with losing our remotes, having to recraft them, and so on and so forth. And they're not always the easiest things to craft. So the best way to track your progression through the different remotes is looking at the actual quest progression here for Simple Storage. Right here on the side, we have a whole line for the different remotes. You start off with the basic one, which is super easy to make. And as you can see, it gives you access to the network from a distance of 64 blocks. So 64 blocks away, I believe it is a radius, right? It doesn't say it right here, but I believe it's a radius of 64 blocks. You can access your Simple Storage network and utilize it to pull and put things into, as well as craft directly within the interface, which is really nice. But it is only from that distance. The next tier up, the Simple Remote, it allows you to access it from an unlimited distance, but then it does remove crafting from the interface, which is a big bummer because then you have to take things that you want out and then have a different way of actually then crafting them, be it a handheld crafting table, or if you make up a crafting table yourself and you place it down and then craft what you need to make, you can do it that way. Not my most favorite, and it says unlimited distance, but there should be an asterisk with it. It does not work in different dimensions, from my understanding. I'd have to retest it again, but I'm pretty positive. So that's a simple one, and then we have the upgraded one, which is what we now have. It's a remote with crafting and unlimited distance, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. That's really kind of the sweet spot of it. Now, there is one more in the progression, which we might eventually get to. It's more resource intensive and a lot of stuff from the end dimension, which we have not gone to yet. But it has the same exact effects as the one before, but it works across different dimensions. So something cool to keep in mind. But yeah, we can run through the kind of progression of the crafting here. So you need storage cables at first with electrum ingots. So you do need to get into Botania to get these storage cables, as we know. The Simple Remote, then you need the pink slime, which we did a whole episode on. Pretty straightforward to get, and especially if you capture one and you mob duplicate it, great way to get pink slime. And then the upgraded one, we need a few different components. Actually, a lot of it is not too hard to get. The most tricky one is this PSI metal ingot. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today once we get actually into that content. But those were what were holding us up from originally getting to this point, because you do have to progress relatively far within the PSI mod to be able to have the trick of infusion to turn gold ingots into the PSI metal ingots. But we were able to get that done over on the stream. So again, if you do want the full recap, highly recommend checking it out. But we're going to run through things today around it. We're going to run through things around PSI. Now, there's one other thing that we did before we jump into PSI that I do want to mention, because it could be extremely useful to those of you who are trying to progress with some of the altered crafting recipes in this mod pack. So a lot of the altered recipes they call for different compressed materials, be it cobblestone, flint, sand, gravel. I mean, even when you're sieving things at the early stages on, it requires compressed, or you can use compressed gravel to get a higher output yield, which is pretty cool. Well, there is a machine that can help you do this. Rather than taking all those materials yourself, laying them out in a crafting table, you can do a setup like I have here. Now, it is a little bit more advanced. It's not something for right when you start the game, but it's a good thing to work towards and get up and running relatively early, I would say. So this is my compressing machine here. And the reason that I'm trying to get it up and running is for a lot of these loot bag mod recipes. They take sextuple compressed cobblestone, which, as you can see right there, each one is over 500,000 blocks of cobblestone. So it's a lot. And we need a lot for each recipe. So this is kind of my automated way to let it go and do its own thing and me not have to worry about it. But you can obviously apply this, like I said earlier, to different instances. If you had a bunch of gravel, you could throw it in here and let it automate itself. So the main component of this is the auto compressor. And we can take a peek at its crafting in here. I believe it's this one right here. So it does require quite a bit of diamonds because it does take these compressed diamond hammers in order to make it. And these compressed diamond hammers take 9 diamond hammers within. Makes sense, it's compressed one. And these each then take 2 diamonds to make up. So you can do the math on your own, but you're looking well at close to 100 diamonds. I think it's in the realm of about 80 actually, but still it's pretty high up there in the amount of diamonds that you would need. Now your other option is you can actually buy a diamond hammer from the shop, but again, you can run out the math on your own to see how much money it would take to get all of them. And I think when I did the math on stream, it was like 21,000 coins or something like that if I bought all the hammers that I needed for these compressed hammers in order to get the compressing machine, the auto compressor. So personally, what I went with is just crafting them up myself. I do have an episode, a recent episode, on how to get good diamond production up and going from the items that you can find within the world, from the different loot that you can find within the world. So I recommend checking that out if you are curious on how you can take a lot of your diamond armor you might be finding and get diamonds out of them. But this is the recipe. As you can see, it's actually pretty straightforward other than the compressed diamond hammers. A basic machine casing, not too bad. We've been doing that for quite some time now. And then the most tricky thing will probably be these cold iron ingots because they are from Bewitchment, and at least for us, we have not gotten into Bewitchment yet. But we have had to utilize these before, and you can actually buy the cold iron nuggets in the shop for 50 coins each. And considering you only need, what, 4 ingots, you're only going to need that 4 times 9, so 36 nuggets you're going to need. And then obviously you can run the math out on the cost, but it's not too expensive realistically. So for me, as you can see, I have it set up in a way that it's taking cobblestone, because that's my ultimate goal, and compressing it. So originally what I had going on was all of my cobblestone from my tier 5 cobblestone generators was getting put into a drawer, and I was just kind of letting that grow and grow and grow and grow. And in my mind, I was thinking that later down the line, I would deal with how to actually compress those into what I need. But this kind of solved the problem for me. So what we basically have is our cobblestone generators depositing all of their cobblestone into the drawer still using Ender IO item conduits. Highly recommend these. These are one of the best item conduits you can use if you have Ender IO installed in this mod pack. They're the best ones to have. So have it set up like this. If you haven't used the item conduits before, you got to make sure that the side that you're extracting from is set to extract. Make sure that redstone mode is always active. And then on this side, it has to be insert. By default, it's always extract. On this, on the insert side, you'll have to switch it to be insert. So we have it like that. So they're all coming into here. And then from here, I have item conduits going out the back, taking from the drawer into our auto compressor. And it's the very same thing for this. I have to set the upper one to always be active. It'll be set default to extract, and then the bottom one you just have to put to insert because you're inserting into the auto compressor. Then the next part of this is the loop that I've made here. So I just took some item conduits and I looped them back into itself. So coming from the machine back into the machine. So basically what this will do is it'll take any of the outputs, any of the compressed stone or compressed items, it'll pull them out, extract them, loop them back in, and put them back into the input side. So then once you get 9 of those compressed items, it'll compress it again into a double compressed item. And it'll just keep going and going and going and going. And here, I'll go into the interface here so you guys can see what I mean. As you can see, we have compressed cobblestone blocks building up here. And what they'll do is once we get to 9 of them, or I guess I'll start with normal cobblestone because that makes more sense. The normal cobblestone is coming in here. Once it gets 9 of them, it'll turn it into normal compressed cobblestone. That gets extracted, goes around our loop down here, back into the input side, and then it eventually will accumulate enough of those compressed blocks to get a double compressed block. And then same with taking these double compressed and then turning them into triple compressed. Now it just does take some time. As you can see, it kind of prioritizes things in its own way. You see we have 15 double compressed right here. Well, realistically, it could take all of those and move them, or take 9 of them and make them into a triple compressed if it wanted to, but it just is taking its time. It kind of goes at its own pace. Now I think if I move that up there, yeah, it'll take it quicker from up there. So really, it might be a good recommendation to have a lot of those up here that need to go through quicker. Whereas you get to these quintuple, the sextuple, or anything like that, it takes a lot longer to get to those compressed blocks. So that's the setup that I use. I think it's extremely useful and it's very easy. Obviously, you do need some power to run this auto compressor, but it doesn't take too much. It consumes 5 FE per tick. So it's not too shabby at all. And I just let it sit and run, especially if you just let your game run for a while, it'll accumulate those over time. So yeah, that was that. And now let's go over and let's talk on PSI, because PSI is an interesting mod. And as you guys probably have seen, it can be kind of complicated. And unfortunately, you do need to progress a decent amount of the way through it in order to unlock a lot of the items that you may want to get to. Now for us on stream, I actually progressed far enough to get our infusion. I've actually progressed quite far to the point where we're up to level 15, I think. And the way you can tell is the ones you've completed are all at the bottom here and they turn green. At first I was confused. I'm like, oh, they're gone. I can't go back and look at them. But no, they're here at the bottom if you need them. So we've gotten up to level 15 of greater infusion. Now this is an extremely confusing mod, I'm not gonna lie. And it's a little bit tricky. So we've gone through some of the basics before, but I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll go through each individual tier to show you guys what the layout should be for when you are making things. Now, I am going to admit, I did use some help when getting through these. There is a website, and I'll try to link it down below in the description if I remember, that you can utilize to do a copy and paste of the actual spells into here. So for example, I have it up on the side, and what we can do is we could take the level 1 tutorial here. I could do a copy on it, and then you have here right on the left or the right hand side of this interface, you have these couple buttons. You have inscriber help, you have export to clipboard, and then you have import from clipboard. And that's what you want to be using. So you can copy this information from this website and then use this import clipboard. So you can hit shift and then click on it. And as you can see, it imported what I needed for our tier 1, which is pretty cool. And it gives you the name from it because that is what it has been named within what you're copying pasting. So every single time I copy and I paste it over, that's what it's going to be. So I figured that I'll have this link down below so you guys can use it as well, but I'll also run through each individual one here so that you guys can see visually what you need to be doing for it. Considering I know that not everyone wants to do a copy and paste. Some people are way better with visually seeing things, and also not everyone trusts different links and things like that. So again, let's run through it. So let's get set up here and we'll jump right on into it. All right, guys, so I have our tutorial book here up for the PSI mod, and I'm just going to step through each individual progression for you guys. So we'll start with tutorial level 1 and we'll progress our way through. So feel free to kind of sift through this portion of the video to find what you might be looking for. So for tutorial 1, basically it's just giving you an introduction. Obviously you can read through this on your own time, on your own playthrough, but it's an introduction onto the mod itself, and it helps you get integrated into how it works with creating spells. Basically, it's going to start you off with doing a debug spell. So if we come over to here, and we already have our level 1 imported here, you're going to want to take your wand, and I know I've been over this before on our introductory stuff to PSI, but basically you're going to want to take a infuser here. We have a greater infusion here. And you just want to click it, you want to right click it onto our spell inscriber, and then we're going to throw it back onto our wand just like so. And then if you hold it in your hand and you hold down the same button that you used to pull up your tutorial book, it'll open up this. So as you can see, we can select level 1, and it'll go through level 1 just like so. Now, when you do it, it'll come up with like a tutorial complete, congratulations and everything, but we've already been through it, so it's not going to show that for us. So let's move on to tutorial number 2 then. All right, so now we're over to tutorial number 2, and this is talking on numbers, getting you integrated into numbers and how to use them within your spell casting. So again, there's a bunch of material you can read through here. I don't think it's the most helpful. It kind of gives you an idea, but for me personally, I'm more of a visual learner, so I wish there's more visual components to how you need to do it. But something to keep in mind as you progress through each step, any of these red highlighted components down here, you need to utilize to progress through that tutorial. So just keep that in mind. We already have it set up here on our inscriber, as you can see. So you're still using the debug, you're still using the caster. It's pretty much the same, but this time you are adding a constant number into it using a connector. So pretty straightforward. This is level 2, and I can show you then, if we take our inscriber off of here, click it on here, come back over to this and grab it, we can click it, and it gives you a little bit more information. So that is level 2. As you can see, now let's move on to level 3. All right, so now we are on to tutorial 3 here, and this is all about adding motion to entities. So for this one, ultimately what it'll have us do is be able to move us to a different location. Now again, keep in mind the red item, the red component you do need to have in there. The other one you don't necessarily have to, but you can use them as well. But this one is a must. So I have the spell up here for level 3. As you can see, we have our caster, and it's connected into our add motion. And we also have our entity look, which is also connected to it. Now, the other way that you can do this as well, which I believe is the way I did it, is actually have 2 casters, one here and one here, then both coming up to here, and then having a number selected for this. And I think it does tell you that you do need to use a 3. If you start getting to a higher number and it's not working, like let's say for us, we did 30. Well, you can see over here, it changes our potency, the power of the spell, to way more than what we have capabilities to do with the current wand that we have. So just keep that in mind. This number is going to be different for you because I am using a higher tier wand, because you will have to do that eventually. But we have that all set. I already have it on our wand, so we can do this. And as you can hear, it makes a little noise, uses a little bit of power there on the right-hand side, and it moves us 3 blocks, which is pretty cool. So now that we have that one done, let's jump into the 4th tutorial. All right, now we are on tutorial number 4, and this one is all about explosions, adding a new trick. So the last trick was motion. This time we're going to get into explosions, which is kind of cool. It's a cool, different take on things. And as you can read here in the first paragraph, it's talking about how the spell that we're going to make is going to explode a block that the player is looking at. Now again, keep in mind the red item is what we need to use, which is the trick explode. So we have the spell sitting here in our inscriber, as you can see. So we have our caster here. It's going to go to our entity position, which is going to base it on our vector raycast. The caster is also going to tie into our entity look. And then it's going to ultimately filter up to our explode. And you also have a constant number to the explode, which is going to be the power ranking of it. And then there's also an error suppressor on here. I don't think you have to have that on here, but this should work just fine. So there you go. So we have it on our wand already. I'm going to take this one actually outside because I don't want to destroy anything in the base, obviously. And let's see what we can do here. So as you can see, it kind of fires. It's almost the same animation as a fireball from a ghast. But for us, it's not actually going to destroy anything because I think I have my area protected. I think that's why it won't actually explode it. Let me just test that as well. We could go outside of the parameters where I have blocked off. And we are in wilderness now. Let's see if this will work. Yep, there you go. So it's not going to work if you have your area selected to be committed to your player. or if you have it chunk loaded, it's not going to show that explosion, like actually visibly do the exploding, but it will still progress you. Because I think when I did it, I had done it in here, and obviously it didn't actually destroy anything, but it was giving me the progression to actually move on to the next tutorial. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the next level, which will be level 5, Entities 101. All right, so as you guys can see, there's a couple different level 5 tutorials for us to go through. So there's entities, numbers, and vectors, and we're going to go through them one by one. So the first one is entities. So entities 101, this is just going to talk on identifying different entities, identifying items, different nearby living things, enemies, so on and so forth, even animals, and being able to add them to different lists, and then being able to do a number of different kind of tricks to those animals or those entities as well. So that's kind of the whole idea behind this one. And this one is just going to be moving an entity. So we're using the trick motion component for this one. And we do have to use the closest to point component for this as well. So we have it here in our inscriber. It's very, very difficult to look at, I'm not gonna lie. So here's our base caster. We have it tied up to our entity position. It's gonna be tied into our closest point as well here. We're using these connectors also up here to connect to nearby living, which will be, I believe it's a 32 block radius is what it's going to be using there. Now down here, it's tying into our trick of adding motion. So basically it'll be looking for a living thing within this time frame, or within this radius, I should say, and adding the trick motion effect to it. It's gonna move it 5 blocks, and it's going to be moving it in the direction I think that we are looking. So I have it on my wand here. We can go outside and we can test it out and see how it works. Now, first and foremost, we're gonna have to find an entity. Unfortunately, it can be a little bit difficult around here to find actual things to move around. Now, you don't personally have to do it this way. You don't have to actually use it on an entity. You could just cast the spell right away and then move on to the next one. But I do like to show you guys what it can do. So we should be able to move the entity. So the one that we're looking at, like right here, we should be able to move them. Now, we did use a lot of power for it, so we got to let it regen right there on the right side. But once it gets full up, we should be able to move it just like so. And it does use a lot of power, like you saw there. So that is the level 5 entities one. We are going to next move on to the level 5 numbers 101. All right, so now we have our numbers 101 pulled up here. And basically, this is just going to run you through the ideas of using different number components within your spells, be it like how we've thus far used it to get different radiuses, to get different distances that we are going to move things, so on and so forth. But you can also use it in more detail if you so choose to do, using basic arithmetic or basic mathematics. So, your plus, minus, multiply, divide, so on and so forth. Now for this one, we do have to use the operator of sum in order to actually progress through this tutorial. So do keep that in mind as we go through it. I do have it set up here in our inscriber. So as you can see, a whole bunch of different things going on here. Basically using a debug trick. We're actually not using a caster on it though, which is a little bit surprising. And I don't think it actually explains it to you on here. So as you can see, we have constant numbers being added together. And then these are going to be added to get 10. It's going to subtract it to get 5. And then it's going to be multiplied by -5 to get -25. And then we're going to get that divided by 5, which gives -5. And then it's going to take the inverse of that, which should be, what? It should be normally 5, right? And then the absolute or something like that. Eventually, I think it's getting us back to 5, if my understanding of this basic math is correct. It's been a while, so you guys are gonna have to go easy with me on that one. So I do have it on here. So this one should be pretty straightforward. We can just cast it right in here, and it's gonna give us the outcome, which is 0.2. So my math was a little bit off, but regardless, that's basically all we're getting from that one. And again, unfortunately, I just don't feel like the tutorial really helps you through this enough to understand what you need to be doing with it. And now that also isn't the only way that you can do it. There's a number of different ways that you could utilize that. That's just one of them. And that is based off of that website that I am utilizing. But next we're going to jump into vectors. So vectors 101. So again, you can read through some of this vectors detail, but basically this is starting to get into a 3D ideal space of utilizing spells. So as of thus far, we've really only been using our X and Y components from different distances out or in. Now we're going to incorporate up and down as well. So the main component we need to use with this is a vector construct. We have the spell up and going in our inscriber here. As you can see, they are getting more and more tricky, so I'm not going to try to necessarily explain what each component is doing, but I'll try to hover over each one so you guys can at least see the name for them. So we are starting with our caster on this one. It is tying to our add motion, which is giving us also a radius to it that it's going to add the motion distance, which is 5. It's also, our caster is tied to entity look, so it's going to be where we are looking at from my understanding, which ties into the vector sum. Now the vector sum is then linked over to our vector construct, which is going to take an X, Y, and Z value and utilize that to move something that distance. So I believe this is going to move up something 1 block upwards. So we do have it here, so we could try to do it. I don't think it'll work on ourselves, we could see. Oh, it does, there you go. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a leaping effect, which is pretty cool. I don't know if we can use it on other entities. I think it's just on ourselves based upon how this is set up, which is pretty cool. It's kind of a cool, it's a cool mod. It is quite difficult though. I will definitely say that. So with that being said, let's move on to the next level, which is level 6. Well, one of the level 6s, alternative casting. All right, so like I mentioned, this is one of the level 6 tutorials. There's actually 2, alternative casting and then block works as well. So alternative casting is looking more into casting spells in different ways, which is kind of interesting. Now, again, you can read through some of this stuff, but I think basically this is saying that you can cast from a distance more than what we were doing before. Before we were kind of having to be up next to the entity. We were going to have to use it on ourselves, which obviously is in a close proximity, whereas this one is going more for a distance. Now we do need to utilize the focal point selector component for this one. I do have it pulled up here in our inscriber for this spell. So again, it starts getting more and more tricky. We'll start with our caster up here. We have it tied into our add list operator. And from here, we have the nearby living selector tied in. So it's going to utilize 32 block radius. I believe it's 32 block radius tied into the nearby living, which is also then having the operator entity position tied into it. And this operator entity position is also being tied into our closest to point, and also having the focal point brought into that as well. Now this is going to add motion, as you can see, and it does have a vector construct. So from my understanding, looking at everything thus far in here, basically we can utilize this from a distance on an entity, and it's going to propel it 6 blocks roughly up into the air. So I have it on my spell here. I have it on my wand here, I should say. I have this spell on my wand. Let's try to go out. We'll find another entity that we can utilize this on and see if it works. So we do need to be close enough to the entity, and let's try to do one on land. Obviously, we have a bunch of squids out here, but they're in water, so it makes it a little bit more tricky. Let's go back over to our black sheep here and see how this works. So we should be able to be farther away. Oh, and I guess it just does it on ourselves. And we can actually hold it down and kind of propel ourselves into the air. So I was mistaken, it doesn't work on another entity, it just works on ourselves, which is kind of interesting. And we could just kind of continuously use it on ourselves to push ourselves up. Now, obviously, as you saw there, we did take some damage, and I think we take damage if we hit the bottom meter of our bar there on the right. So that is our level 6 for alternative casting. Now we're going to move on to our level 6 for block works. All right, so level 6 for Blockworks. Pull it up here in our book. So right here, this is working with blocks. And basically, from my recollection of what this spell is going to have us do, it's going to have us move a block. Now, again, you can tie this out to be more complex based on what you are looking for. And you can play with it a lot more. There's a lot of possibilities for it. But ultimately, that's what we are going to be doing. Now, again, keep in mind, we do need to use the trick break block sequence component in order to actually complete this tutorial. So I have it pulled up over here. So we'll start with our caster, have it tied to our entity position as well as our entity look. This is going to both then tie into a vector raycast, which is going to tie into a break block sequence trick that is going to be tied with a constant number as well as our vector construct telling us kind of where things are going. So I have it here on our wand and we can actually utilize it outside here because I did it inside when I first did it and I had to move stuff back. But we could use it right here on this block and it's gonna break it for us. And as you can see, it'll break a lot of stuff for us. So not only just one, but several blocks there. And it'll break it a distance up as well because that's based on the vector component of it, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool that we have that possibility. Now you just obviously want to be careful with it. I would definitely recommend not utilizing it inside because you'll end up probably destroying some stuff. So with that being said, let's move on to our last level that we needed to actually get our PSI metal infusion up and going. All right, so the PSI metal infusion is a level 10 tutorial in here, and it's pretty straightforward. It actually is probably one of the easiest parts of this that you could get to, and that's what we needed to actually get the PSI metal infusion going so we can convert the gold into the PSI metal ingots. So again, you can read through all of this. It says it's an important component in constructing rods with better PSI conduction, and so on and so forth. For us, it's extremely useful for some of these altered crafting recipes that we have in the mod pack. So, with that being said, there's only one component to this, and it's trick infusion. So we need to use that, and it's the most simple skill ever. All you need to do is select trick infusion. That's all you have to do. So with that being said, we can take our rod, we'll grab our little spell caster off of it, we'll throw it back on just like so, and now we can utilize the infusion to change gold over to our PSI metals. So if we go into our inventory, we grab a little bit of gold, just like so. We can throw it down, take our wand, right click, and just like that, we have some PSI metal. Now, again, I do want to mention, be careful if you have a magnetization item on you because it will pick things up. For us, there's a delay, so it's perfectly fine. But if yours does not have a delay, it could interfere with you trying to craft this up. Now, you can also do it in a larger quantity if you really wanted to. So you could literally just take, let's say 16, we'll drop them on the ground, take our wand, and it'll infuse all 16. Now, as you saw, it utilized a little bit more of our power on the right-hand side there in order to do so. So keep that in mind that you want to watch that out. Obviously, it regenerates, but I feel like you could easily do a whole stack with the amount of power that you have. And that's about it. I mean, that's pretty much all that you need to know in order to get to that level in PSI to be able to get the PSI metal ingots so that you can continue on doing some of the crafting, which is pretty cool. Now for us, we actually progressed even farther so we can get the PSI gems up and going, and even more than that as well. We got up to, I think it's the level 15 progression, and you can utilize that website link down below to progress even farther if that's what you really want to do. But yeah, I think that is going to just about do it. I'm going to mock it up here for our thumbnail today, just like so. Make sure that we get a good screenshot of that for later on. But yeah, so that'll do it. If you guys do want to see more of this PSI stuff, let me know. I can kind of help you get guided to the next tier so you can get crafting more. But like I said, that website does help out a bunch, and you can just import all of the different spells that you need. I did not mean to place that back down. But guys, we are running late on time here, so we're going to wrap things up for today. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to leave a like down below, or better yet, leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking on everything. If you do want to follow me over on Twitch, like I mentioned earlier, you can find that in the description, along with my Discord link. That's where you can stay up to date with everything that's going on in the channel, as well as with the stream. And if you have questions or concerns, you can also leave them over there. And not only me, but people from the community can help you out. We can get chatting and get things sorted out. So guys, with that being said, I appreciate it so much for you guys sticking through till the end. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Take it easy.